Will there be a vaccine October surprise? Trump gets nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Troop cuts planned in Iraq. And life inside a college COVID quarantine. Welcome, friends, to the Buck Sexton Show. Honored to have you here with me. Thank you so much for joining. Much to get to today. Oh my, the vaccine situation. We're already seeing how this is now going to be a central battleground of the election. Now let's take a step back. Shouldn't a vaccine be not about anything other than safety of the general public and making sure that we have the best health outcomes possible for the most people? Isn't this something that's above the usual partisan sniping? Apparently not. No. In fact, what we see is that the vaccine has a tremendous amount of pressure on it right now because the timeline of the election coincides very much with the timeline of when we could theoretically either have a vaccine or even the knowledge that a vaccine is approved and forthcoming. So there's going to be a lot of games that are played here. There's going to be a lot of back and forth between those who want to make sure the American people are as depressed as possible, who want to make sure that the American people feel like they have no hope, they have no future, and those who are saying, look, we've gotten past the worst of this. We're going to have a vaccine shortly. It's going to be approved, and COVID will be in the rearview mirror of this country soon. And then who do you want in charge? Do you want Donald Trump, or do you want that kind of doddering old fool that they occasionally allow to stumble out of the basement to make a jackass of himself? Those are your options. I don't think the Democrats or the media will put it that way, but those are, in fact, your options. We're seeing a lot of hyper-focus on even the smallest setback, right? There was one, I believe, in the AstraZeneca trial, one individual got sick, and so now they're slowing down to make sure they can figure it out, and the whole media is focused in on this. There are a lot of different vaccines out there that are in development, and it's likely we'll have several choices. There'll be several options very soon. And we're going to be past this. We're going to get past COVID one way or the other. And we're already getting closer to herd immunity with every passing day. And we're not supposed to think of it that way because we've become a society that can no longer tolerate normal risk. We become a society that thinks if we embrace government control, if we embrace the tyranny of those who are supposed to know more and know better, then we'll all be safer. We certainly won't be freer, but we'll be safer. This is the promise that, unfortunately, is untrue, but too many people in this country believe. Far too many people in this country. And that's why we continue to get dragged through this nonsense, where now they're saying, oh, we might need to have another series of lockdowns over the wintertime. No more. You have countries that have had incredibly strict lockdowns and have still had large-scale outbreaks of this disease. If you look at a chart that correlates when people started wearing masks or when there were mandates and when the spikes happened, there's just no evidence to support that these lockdowns were successful in the way they were intended to be, and there's enormous damage that comes from them. I mean, here in New York City, we're the only major city in the world where they're saying that there might not be any indoor dining until there's a vaccine. Why? Because they say so. Because they're drunk with power. The same reason why Gavin Newsom out in California, the governor there, is saying that the reason they have so many forest fires and, the reasons that the mayor of L.A. has to tell people to turn off major appliances and how they can't rely on the electric grid is because of climate change. Oh, okay. Because of climate change, right? That's why they have all these problems, environmental and otherwise, in the state of California. Notice that that's not causing all these issues elsewhere. A lot of places have plenty of forests and really hot weather. But California is going through a series of mismanaged catastrophes created by the mismanagement of those in charge in the first place. Same thing in New York. Democrats have created these one-party states, and we all suffer the consequences, including the people who vote for the Democrats in those places. Sure, they promise them stuff, That sounds good if you're a lib, but then when it actually comes time to have to go to your corner, have the trash collected, walk safely down the street, be able to pay your real estate taxes, all these things, Democrats make it all much harder than it has to be. But back to the vaccine, because you're going to see some really ugly stuff around this one. The truth is that there'll be people in the media who, whether consciously or not, it may be subconscious, they're going to undermine this vaccine until the election. I'm not saying they're anti-vax all the way, don't ever get a vaccine. They're not going to say that. But they're going to make people fearful, cautious, and also they're going to claim that Trump has rushed this through. So they get to make it seem like the vaccine is not as good as it might be, as helpful as it may be. And on top of that, they'll blame Trump for any ill effects that happen from it. You know, if there's one person out of millions who gets vaccinated and that causes problems, if there's one person out of millions, then guess what? They will say that it's Trump's fault. Look what they did with hydroxychloroquine. I mean, this is a perfect preview of what we are going to be put through. Hydroxychloroquine is a drug that people have been taking for decades for rheumatoid arthritis and for anti-malaria purposes. It is one of the safer drugs out there. A lot of countries, you buy it over the counter like you do Tylenol. I saw that interesting study that says Tylenol makes people take more risks. I don't see how that's possible, but anyway, that was also in my read pile today. But hydroxychloroquine is as safe a drug as a drug can really be that has any major effect. And what did they do? They ran a whole campaign. The media was on a jihad against hydroxychloroquine. Why? Because Trump was supportive of it as a possible prophylactic, and there had been some individuals, some people who said that they had used this and it had been very successful for them in lowering the death rate from COVID-19. We saw this. The media was, in fact, openly rooting against hydroxychloroquine. So they were on the side of this is terrible, it doesn't work, and they were ignoring contrary evidence. If a study came forward and it said hydroxychloroquine was worthwhile, they didn't want to report on it. If a small, very flawed study came out that said it's terrible, it doesn't do anything, and it's really dangerous, all of a sudden it's a dangerous drug. It's been around for decades, 50, 60 years now. Well, then they would run that as a front page story. And they may very well in that process have pushed people to make decisions that were deleterious to their health. People might have died. And we'll end up finding out at some point if maybe for some individuals in some cases, hydroxychloroquine works as a prophylaxis against this. Maybe it's even just a psychological effect that people, their immune system gets boosted, right? The placebo of taking this and thinking that it would help them. Who knows? But we do know that the media was on it doesn't work. Despair is the only answer here. They were on that side. You're going to see a return of that again. Because right now, it's neck and neck in Florida. And a lot of people I know are saying they're oversampling Democrats in Florida, so Trump is ahead in Florida. And if Trump's ahead in Florida, you got to think, how's he doing in Ohio? I think he's doing just fine in Ohio. And if you got Ohio and Florida, how much else do you really need before you're going to be the president for 4 more years? Democrats are panicked. They will do anything they have to do to change the narrative, to change the feeling of the country so that the optimism that we should all have from, look, this vaccine is going to be here soon. I'm going to be able to come on the show and say to you, guys, we're in the opening phase of distributing this vaccine. Before the end of the year, most likely. I mean, who knows? Things can happen. That's where we're even the Fauci, Dr. Fauci, is cautiously optimistic. Play 12.
Right now, the trials are about 2/3 enrolled. We project that by the end of September, they will be fully enrolled. Then you add another month, a month and a half to get that second dose. So that's the reason why I have been projecting, Judy, that by the end of the year, by November or December, we will know whether we have a safe and effective vaccine. I feel cautiously optimistic. that we will, given the preliminary data that we've seen.
So there you have the lib's favorite scientist, because his answer is always more government restrictions, more seizing of your freedoms and liberties, because he's just always, what else is he going to do? Admit that he doesn't have the answer, that he doesn't know, that he has no good ideas? No. But here you have the lib's favorite scientist, Dr. Fauci, who's saying, by the end of the year, I think we're going to have a vaccine. Okay. So we are probably going to have one. And we're already in September, almost mid-September here, folks. It's going to be mid-November in a flash. So that's going to be vaccine distribution time. That's going to be when all of a sudden, assuming the schedule stays where it is, that's when you're going to be able to turn around and say, hold on a second, I'm able to actually go and get this thing now if you want to. I know a lot of you probably are going to have real qualms about it. People are going to be worried, legitimately concerned that this hasn't been studied enough. I think on the safety side, it's very likely to be just fine, as fine as the flu vaccine, whatever you think of that every year. But on the efficacy side, we'll have to see. If it's 50% effective, I think they'll approve it. That will help, certainly. But then we'll get into what's an acceptable level of public risk for us to completely reopen. I mean, people walking around, doing what they want, no more stupid rules, no more pretending that you're safe because your Uber driver puts on a mask the second you get in the car after not having a mask on for the previous 3 hours, breathing in an enclosed environment. But, no more of that crap. Now, I worry that even after we get a vaccine, there are going to be people say, no, still not safe, still not safe. We're really a country full of people that just love to panic. And if you have a Biden-Harris victory, you'll see even more of that. Here's Kamala Harris letting you know you're going to be wearing, if a Democrat wins, even though the pandemic is receding, they'll take credit for the receding pandemic. And beyond that, they'll make sure that you have to mask for the next 12 to 18 months from now, or from the election, I should say. You're going to be wearing a mask all through next summer. And masking during flu season is going to become normalized. People are just, this is now it's like a fashion accessory to sanctimonious liberals. So they'll wear it even when they don't have to. They wear it outside. No scientific basis for this whatsoever. If you're by yourself outside, there's no reason to do it. But they'll do it because it's a political statement. Well, here's Kamala Harris letting you know, it's definitely going to be a statement. Play 23.
None of us likes wearing a mask. Nobody likes to wear a mask.
There's a difference between a standard.
But it's about sacrifice.
Right. There's a difference between a standard and a mandate. Would it be a federal mandate under the Biden-Harris administration?
It would be a standard. On certain issues, they should not be partisan. And wearing a mask certainly shouldn't be one of them.
No, it should be partisan because you've made it partisan because you pretend that only the other side has any questions about this. They pretend that only Republicans failed to wear masks when, as we know, that's a total lie. In fact, Trump was in North Carolina, and I saw these media outlets putting up photos saying no mask wearing, and you look at the photo at the Trump rally, and there's tons of people in masks. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So if masks work, that should be really limiting the exposure that a lot of folks there have. No credit for that at all, right? None. It's all politics, friends. The whole thing. The Democrats have never once in this entire pandemic, never once, put aside partisan advantage in the interest of public health. Not one time, not one issue. In fact, if anything, they have reveled in their hypocrisy. They have used this to their maximum partisan advantage. And they've shown us that there is nothing, including your very health, freedom, your life. There is nothing more important to them than power. That's it. What does COVID-19 have to do with you losing your home? Well, the FBI says that cybercrime's up about 75% year to year because of the COVID pandemic. And your home's title's online. So home title theft is actually a cybercrime. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your home's information, then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, then take out loans against your home. You often won't find out about this until you're being asked for payment or perhaps even a foreclosure notice arrives. You need Home Title Lock to protect you. The usual identity theft services don't do this. You need Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, enter promo code BUCK to get 30 free days of protection. Again, HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. You can also check at HomeTitleLock.com to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't know it yet. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK.
I think you got a president who's losing it, and I think most people are sick and tired of the ranting and the ravings of Donald Trump. Look, everybody wants a vaccine, but we want to make sure that that vaccine is safe. We don't want to see that vaccine put on the market for political reasons. And I would trust that our doctors, our scientists, and the drug companies will do the right thing and get it onto the market, get it into people's arms when it is ready, not when it suits the political purposes of this increasingly irrational president.
What is Sanders even talking about? You know, they can't have it both ways. It can't be we trust the scientists, we trust the medical community and the scientific medical researchers, but the president is a bad guy, so this vaccine's not going to be the real deal. This has gone on a timeline set by the pharmaceutical companies and by the medical community. That's the truth of the timeline. That's what's actually happening. So what are they even talking about? Why is it that they're going out of their way to raise doubts? Well, it's a rhetorical question. We all know. They want people to, while they're forming their final political judgments here about Trump's handling of this, they don't want people to be thinking, hold on a second. The economy's actually already in rebound. The worst thing going on right now, economically and otherwise, are the lockdowns that Democrats are the most stringent about. And we're going to be through this soon. Do we want to go back to the 3 years we had of the Trump presidency before the pandemic? Or do we want to try something else with the weekend at Bernie's presidency of Joe Biden? That's where it is. Now, that's all that you really have to be thinking about. You make that choice. You make that decision, and you know. But they don't want it to be that. Because I think that's quite clear, especially to independents and swing voters. Saw that poll saying Latinos in the Miami area and southern Florida not really going for Biden as much as the Democrats would want. It looks pretty close for Trump. He's definitely gaining ground. So what are they doing? They're trying to suggest, even though they have without evidence, as they like to say, the president has recklessly pushed forward this vaccine. Then you also have the president pushing back on this, thankfully, which is helpful. Play clip 20.
Biden and his very liberal running mate, the most liberal person in Congress, by the way, is not a competent person, in my opinion, would destroy this country and would destroy this economy, should immediately apologize for the reckless anti-vaccine rhetoric that they are talking right now, talking about endangering lives, and it undermines science. And what's happening is all of a sudden you'll have this incredible vaccine, and because of that fake rhetoric, it's a political rhetoric, that's all it is, just for politics, because now they see we've done an incredible job, and in speed like nobody's ever seen before. This could have taken 2 or 3 years, and instead it's going to be done in a very short period of time. Could even have it during the month of October.
They can't deny people the vaccine. Even Democrats, I don't think, would get away with that one. But they can try to deny the administration credit for it right before an election. And that's what they're going to do. It's looking pretty good for the Trumpster right now, folks. We're not counting our chickens before they hatch. But we are at least in this fight till the very end. This is going to be a squeaker. And even if you think Trump is going to crush Biden by more than he crushed Hillary in 2016, got to assume, got to have the mindset of it's going to be a race that comes down to thousands, just a few thousand votes in a few states. That's it. That's got to be our mentality. But we are certainly in it. There should be no there should be no despair, no hopelessness, no, oh my gosh, we are in this fight. And the Democrats know it. They're freaked out. There's a pandemic going on. They're saying that we've lost close to 200,000 people in this country to COVID-19. Put aside the from COVID or with COVID numbers issue, but there's obviously it's been a traumatic year for the country, a traumatic year. And yet the incumbent, you'd think, would be in such a terrible spot. And instead, enough people have seen that the president is making decisions in the best interest of the American people going through this thing. And the insane media, last week it was he hates the military. Next week it'll be, he's totally no evidence for this. He's a sexual assault maniac. Week after that it'll be, Russia stupidity all over. Pelosi, I'm sorry, she already beat me to it. Play 24.
That's exactly what his purpose is to say, why should you vote? Your vote will not be counted as cast. But that's, again, a tactic on his part that must be ignored. And it's in Putin's style. And Putin likes to discredit democracy, ours or others, around the world. And the president is being an accomplice in that, in what he is saying. So it is, this is glorious for us. And under 60 days, we'll have an election. We will have the results. And we want to have people know that they can vote and not have to risk their health in order to cast their vote. No matter what the president says about vote twice, anybody should know that's wrong. And he has been told that, even though his attorney general, again, is a henchman of the president in that regard. It pains me to say that on a prayerful Sunday morning, but nonetheless, the facts must be faced.
Pelosi is just a slanderous clown. I mean, it's amazing. The president's a henchman bar and Putin. It's amazing how much crap she can spew at one time. It's amazing how much nonsense she can fit in one shoe, so to speak. Family show, I know. But come on. He's Putin's attempts to undermine our democracy. You know what's funny? Putin doesn't need any help undermining our democracy. The Democrats themselves are doing it. The Democrats are the ones preparing already to say the election's illegitimate. What did they do in 2016 before the general public even knew about all this Russia absurdity? Not my president! Not my president! They were marching through the streets. I saw them. I remember it. He's not the president. He's not my president. He didn't really win. What? The rejection of objective reality is a central premise for Democrats today. They just say, no, that's not a chair you're sitting in. That's something else. I'll call it what I want to call it. Why are you negating that chair's personhood? Wait, what? They're full of crazy. They're full of crazy. I saw Trevor Noah, one of the most unfunny professional comedians in the country. Guy's paid millions of dollars to be a crappy political pundit now. He's just not good. But he's talking about how gender reveal parties should wait until an individual is old enough to know what their gender is. I got news for you, buddy. The doctor knows what the gender is as soon as the baby comes out, and often before, depending on the sonogram. But you know what the gender is. This is objective reality that libs are going, nope, that's not objective. No, it is. It is. But they can't live with that. They can't handle that. Can you imagine the emotional crack up that about 30 to 40% of the country, because look, there are some Democrats who they're just paying their bills, working a job. They think that the Democrats still stand for working families and more of a safety net and inclusion and diversity or whatever. They believe the talking points. And look, I understand, right? They got busy lives. They got a lot of challenges. Not everyone's as immersed in politics as you and I. You and I. That was correct. Good job, Buck. But the hardcore left, the real true believers on the left, they can't be reasoned with. And they will have an emotional breakdown if Trump wins. They won't be able to process this. So that's why part of it is creating the narrative now of Trump as cheater so that they can prevent him from winning. But it's also, to borrow from Peter Strzok. You remember him? Peter Strzok, he was testifying in Capitol Hill. He sounds like this. It's an insurance policy. It is an insurance policy. Because if they do lose, which is a very real possibility, as anyone paying attention to the polls, the data would know, at least then they can retreat into this cocoon of delusion that they didn't really lose. That's what they're preparing for. That's what they are doing right now. And that's why, I mean, Pelosi out there, Putin's attempts to undermine, Putin is Russia. You know, like someone needs to get Nancy a couple of Tylenol, some Gatorade, and let her, maybe a cold shower. Let her shake it off a little bit. Nancy, Chardonnay Nancy needs to calm down a little bit here. But she is indeed making the case that we knew she would, that this is all really about Russia somehow. This is a Russia issue. But the libs are worried, and they should be. They should be. Joy Behar, noted pollster and expert in American politics. Joy Behar, play clip 6.
I'm more worried that Trump could pull this off, though, because of various reasons. And we all see the polls and we see that Biden is ahead. But the Russian interference is alive and kicking. Facebook is continuing to leave all the lies on the pages. The Postal Service is being interfered with. We've seen USPS mailboxes being rounded up and mail sorting machines deactivated. So there's a lot of cheating. And on top of that, the Electoral College, I think, is an issue and a problem. You know that in the history of the United States, there were 4 presidents who won without the popular vote because of the Electoral College. I think it's ridiculous that that a few states, a handful of states, determines my future. It's ridiculous. So why bother voting in the rest of the country? They need to change the Electoral College as soon as possible. That George Bush, Donald Trump, Benjamin Harrison, and the great Rutherford B. Hayes all won without the real backing of the United States of America. So there you have it.
Joy Behar, it's like a buffet of stupidity. A little bit from here, a little bit from there. What do you mean with the Electoral College? The Russian interference. Ugh. Who watches this woman on TV and thinks that it's worth their time? I really mean that. I want to know. Who thinks, I want to get my politics from Joy Behar? There was so much that was wrong in what she said. I don't even know if I have time to go through all of it. First off, I love how she goes from Russian interference to the Postal Service to, that's right, all the different theories at once about why Trump is cheating. When all these theories, when we drill into them, when we look at them, they're all crazy. They're all Looney Tunes conspiracy theories, don't really exist, didn't really happen. But they figure if they put them all in there, just throw it all in the bucket and see if it'll sink. They don't care. This is what they're going to do. We've known it all along. This is not even the least bit surprising. I've been telling you. It's the kitchen sink. They're throwing it. Yeah, they are. It is the kitchen sink, and they are throwing it at them. They're going to do everything they can, everything in their power to make sure that this election cannot really be a win for Trump supporters. That's why I keep telling you, I'm going to be a sore winner if Trump wins. I'm usually a person that tries to show some grace and dignity to the other side, but nah, not on this one. I'm going to be dancing around doing buck victory. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there'll be buck victory dances. Maybe even put on social media for all to see, because it's going to feel pretty good if we get through this absurdity. But Joy Behar is worried about the Electoral College. The libs keep doing this. It's like they're the dumb kid in the class who never does the homework and then wants to opine on the assignments that they never did. Right? The Electoral College exists for a reason, because we are in a republic and because there are states and states have jurisdiction. And this was an intentional thing. This wasn't a side effect. And the race that we run is not rack up as many votes as you can in every state. It's based on, you know this. I'm not going over this for you, but does she not understand this? Does she not know that this would be very different? right? This would be like saying every time you lose a game that's 4 quarters of 10 minutes in length, let's say, or 12 minutes in length, every time you lose that game, you say, well, it should have been first one to 21 points. But that's not the game you're playing. It's you're playing 4 quarters. You're not playing first one to a certain score. So stop complaining only when you lose about how you're not winning the game based on the rules that were established beforehand. This is what they'll do. This is the plan. There's even much more concerning than Joy Behar spouting off as just a total imbecile. Much more concerning than that is what we've heard from one of the most powerful people in the world, somebody who really does have the wherewithal to change the trajectory of the election, does have the influence to determine which political party, if he wanted to, ends up being in power. Mark Zuckerberg, everybody. He has some thoughts on what we should all be prepared for.
One of the things that I think we and other media need to start doing is preparing the American people that there's nothing illegitimate about this election taking additional days or even weeks to make sure that all of the votes are counted. In fact, that might be important to make sure that this is a legitimate and fair election. So we're going to do a bunch of different messaging around that just to make sure that people know that that's normal. So if one of the candidates in any of the races claims victory before there's a consensus result, then we're going to add some informational context to that post directly, saying that there's no consensus result yet. I think that this is important because there is, unfortunately, I think, a heightened risk of civil unrest in the period, between voting and a result being called or after that.
You don't say. Yeah. And we all know who's going to be doing the unrest. Libs, Democrats, leftists. That's where the unrest will come from. Republicans, for better or worse, will be saying, hold on a second, what do the rules tell us? What are our legal remedies right now? The libs will be saying, declare Biden the winner, will burn down your business. All hail Vice President Kamala, or else we'll ruin your neighborhood. And drag you out of your home, drag you out of your store, and beat you up in the street. That's how the Democrats are going to play it. So we all know that. We should get ready for that. We should be prepared. And I have to laugh. I mean, it's not funny, but it's just so absurd that you can't process it as a serious thing in some ways. The Democrats saying they're preparing for Republican violence. They're preparing for the GOP to cause problems and take to the streets. Oh, it's as if the last few months haven't really happened. It's as if the country hasn't been going through this already since May. Remember George Floyd? Remember when, if you were a public figure, you had to constantly take a knee and bow and beg for forgiveness? Remember all that? Over George Floyd. Somebody who no one really gives a whole lot of thought to these days. They don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, do they? No, but that was just the inciting incident. That was the spark for this rapidly spreading fire of unrest and disorder. What happens, as Mark Zuckerberg raises it, what happens if the election at election night you don't have a concession, which you won't have? Biden's not going to concede, not going to do it. Out of spite, if nothing else. It doesn't matter if it's a pro-Trump landslide. Biden won't concede because of mail-in ballots. How many are out there? We don't know. How many got sent in? We don't know. And then they'll try to think of other schemes and tricks. They're just going to try to delay and sabotage the process. This is going to happen, right? If you see how this is all playing out, I'm telling you, I think we're going to end up going back and looking at this show, and I'll play it for you in November 4th, November 5th, and you'll be saying, wow, Buck saw this one coming. Yeah. Not going to concede night of the election. They got to at least drag it out in their minds for a week or two to see if they can do something with the mail-in ballots. They got to figure something out because they can't handle Trump being president. I can handle Joe Biden being president. I'm not sure the country can. But emotionally, psychologically, yeah, we'll figure it out. Someone asked me over the weekend, where would you go? And that's part of the problem. Where do you go? Where do you leave to? Can't go to Canada, a bunch of socialists up there. And can't go to New Zealand, it's way too far, a bunch of socialists down there. Where do you go? You want to move to Europe? You want to move to East Asia? Where are you going to go? So we can't give up the fight here because this is it, folks. This is the last bastion for a philosophy of limited government and individual rights. This is we are it. And our influence all over the world is I was going to say a beacon of freedom. Sounds like I'm in a beauty contest somewhere. But it really is inspiring to other people. There's a reason why the Hong Kong protesters were singing our national anthem and waving our American flag. So if Biden wins, I can handle it, but I don't know what happens to the country, really. We'll keep fighting. But they can't process a Trump victory. If Trump wins, they will be rolling around in the streets shrieking like a bunch of actual lunatics.